Before the books, before the videos, before the conversations about consciousness, conditioning, identity, and awakening, I was simply a man trying to understand his own life. My name is Leroy Roy Dingle. I was born in Charleston, South Carolina, and raised within the traditions, expectations, beliefs, and cultural influences that shaped the world around me. I was not born a philosopher. I did not grow up believing that I would one day write books about self-realization or the awakening of consciousness. I was not trying to create a movement. I was not searching for an audience. In truth, I was searching for myself. Like every human being, I entered this world before I had the ability to question it. Before I understood choice, I had already inherited a story. I inherited family traditions, religious beliefs, cultural expectations, ideas about race, ideas about success, ideas about obedience, ideas about responsibility, ideas about what it meant to be a man, ideas about what I should believe, how I should behave, and who I was expected to become. None of this seemed unusual. It was simply the world as I knew it. That is the nature of conditioning. Conditioning does not normally announce itself. It becomes familiar, it becomes tradition, it becomes identity. Eventually, it can become so deeply embedded within us that we no longer recognize the difference between what we consciously chose and what we simply inherited. For much of my life, I lived within that structure. I did what responsible people are taught to do. I worked, I served, I raised a family. I pursued education. I accepted leadership responsibilities. I attempted to live with discipline, integrity, and purpose. I spent 22 years serving in the United States Air Force. The military became one of the great formative institutions of my life. It taught me discipline, preparation, accountability, leadership, teamwork, adaptability, and service before self. Military life also taught me that environments are never static. Circumstances change, challenges emerge. Systems that worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. As leaders, we were expected to remain prepared, to evaluate what was working, to identify what was failing, and to make the necessary adjustments. We practiced continuous improvement. Continuous improvement requires honesty. It requires introspection. It requires the willingness to examine a system without becoming emotionally attached to the way things have always been done. It asks a simple but difficult question: is this still working? That principle remained with me long after my military career ended. Following my Air Force service, I continued working in administrative leadership and public health care. Those experiences deepened my understanding of institutions, organizations, people, and systems. I saw how individuals could become attached to policies, procedures, traditions, and beliefs, even when those structures were no longer producing the best outcomes. I learned that systems, like people, can become conditioned. They can repeat old patterns. They can defend outdated assumptions. They can resist change, even when change is necessary for survival and growth. On paper, I had lived what many would consider a successful life. I had served my country. I had developed professionally. I had earned degrees and credentials. I had accepted leadership responsibilities. I had worked to provide for my family. But success and self-understanding are not always the same thing. Beneath the accomplishments, another question remained. Who am I beneath the roles I have performed? Who am I before the titles? Before the uniform? Before the expectations? Before the beliefs I inherited? Who am I before the world tells me who I am? That question would not leave me. Eventually, it led me backward into my own family history. At first, I believed I was simply conducting genealogical research. I wanted names, dates, places, birth records, marriage records, death certificates, census documents, church records, stories of where my family came from and how we had survived. I thought I was researching my family. But in many ways, my family history began researching me. Through the historical record, I encountered generations of the Dingle family. I traced the line back through my father, Reverend Isaac Lee Dingle Sr., and through earlier generations that included Jesse Dingle, Dublin Dingle, Sandy Dingle, and Cato Dingle. These were more than names on paper. They represented lives lived under conditions I could only begin to imagine. They lived through slavery and its aftermath, through Reconstruction, segregation, racial violence, economic hardship, religious faith, family responsibility, loss, endurance, and survival. I also came to understand more deeply the legacy of my mother, Dolly Ann Manigault Dingle, and the Manigault family traditions rooted in the South Carolina Lowcountry. The fishermen, the laborers, the mothers, the fathers, the ministers, the ordinary people who kept families alive and passed something forward, even when the world attempted to take so much from them. As I studied their lives, history stopped feeling distant. It became personal. I began to understand that history is not simply something that happened long ago. History continues to live through us. It survives in our language, our habits, our fears, our loyalties, our silences, our strengths, our relationships, our expectations, our emotional responses, and sometimes even within our biology. I began asking myself how much of what I carried had originated in my own lifetime, and how much had been passed forward through generations. That question became one of the first sparks of emergence. Yet my family research was only one part of the awakening. As I explored my ancestry, I also began searching for a broader understanding of African history, philosophy, culture, consciousness, and human development. That journey led me into Afrocentricity. It led me into the study of ancient African civilizations and the intellectual traditions of ancient Kemet. For much of my earlier life, Africa had often been presented through the language of slavery, poverty, colonization, struggle, and deficiency. But Afrocentric study opened another door. I encountered Africa as a source of civilization, knowledge, spiritual inquiry, philosophy, science, mathematics, architecture, ethics, psychology, community, and an ancient search for balance between the individual, society, nature, and the unseen dimensions of existence. I discovered traditions that did not begin the African story with enslavement. They began with humanity. They began with civilization. They began with the pursuit of order, truth, justice, harmony, self-mastery, and right relationship. Learning about ancient African cultures helped me recover dimensions of history that had been ignored, minimized, or filtered through other people's interpretations. It gave me permission to ask new questions. It helped me understand that the dominant worldview is not the only worldview. The stories we inherit are not always complete. The history we are taught is often shaped by the needs, assumptions, and power structures of those who tell it. This did not cause me to reject everything I had previously learned. It taught me to examine it. It taught me that psychological freedom does not come from replacing one rigid ideology with another. Freedom begins when we develop the courage to inquire, to compare, to observe, to question, to reconsider, to grow. My study of metaphysical psychology added another dimension to this journey. It encouraged me to look beyond outward behavior and examine the deeper architecture of thought. It invited me to explore the relationship between mind, identity, consciousness, belief, memory, perception, and reality. I began to understand that human beings do not merely respond to the world as it is. We respond to the world as we have been conditioned to perceive it. Our reactions are often shaped by old experiences, inherited beliefs, emotional wounds, cultural narratives, religious teachings, fear, trauma, and assumptions we have never consciously examined. Metaphysical psychology encouraged me to ask not only, what am I thinking, but also, who is observing the thought? Where did the thought come from? Why do I believe it? Is it true? Does it reflect my present reality? Or is it an echo from the past? Am I choosing this response, or am I repeating a pattern? Those questions created space between the conditioned mind and conscious awareness. That space became central to my understanding of emergence. I began to recognize that much of what we call identity may be the accumulated residue of experience, repetition, expectation, and conditioning. Yet beneath that conditioning exists the human capacity to observe, reconsider, and choose. That does not mean we can erase our histories. It means we can develop a more conscious relationship with them. We can honor what strengthened us while releasing what continues to confine us. We can learn from tradition without becoming imprisoned by it. We can appreciate the past without unconsciously repeating it. These discoveries did not invalidate my military service, my career, my family background, or the religious traditions of my childhood. They gave me a broader lens through which to understand them. I began seeing my life not as a collection of unrelated chapters, but as several rivers flowing toward the same destination. My family history taught me about inheritance. My African-centered studies taught me about cultural recovery and historical perspective. Metaphysical psychology taught me to examine the mind beneath the behavior. My military career taught me discipline, preparation, adaptability, and continuous improvement. My civilian leadership experience taught me how systems resist change, and life itself taught me humility. Together, these experiences formed the foundation of emergence. My first book, Emergence, Journey Toward Self-Realization, was born from the understanding that the journey must begin within the individual. Before we attempt to change society, institutions, communities, or other people, we must develop the courage to examine ourselves. Self-realization is not self-glorification. It is not the belief that we have become better than others. It is the willingness to see ourselves more honestly, to recognize our patterns, to understand our fears, to examine our beliefs, to observe our reactions, to ask how much of our identity was consciously formed and how much was conditioned into us. The journey toward self-realization requires us to become the observer of our own mind. Once we become capable of observing our thoughts, we no longer have to obey every thought automatically. We can pause, we can question, we can investigate, we can choose. That pause became what I describe as the gap. The gap is the space between stimulus and reaction, between what happens and what we automatically do next, between inherited belief and conscious inquiry, between emotional impulse and thoughtful response. The gap is where awareness enters. The gap is where freedom becomes possible. The gap is where emergence begins. My second book, Emergence, Awakening of Consciousness, continued that journey. It asked a deeper question. Once we recognize our conditioning, what do we do with that awareness? Can we consciously participate in our own development? Can we interrupt harmful patterns before passing them into another generation? Can we become more than products of history? Can we remain rooted in our heritage while still growing beyond inherited limitations? Can we awaken without becoming arrogant? Can we question without losing compassion? Can we change without denying where we came from? I am not a perfect man offering perfect answers. I am a regular human being who has lived, served, worked, struggled, succeeded, failed, questioned, researched, and continued searching. I am a son of the South Carolina Low Country, a descendant of people who endured conditions they did not create, a retired Air Force Master Sergeant, a husband, a father, a grandfather, a public servant, a student of history, a student of African culture, a student of consciousness, and a man still learning how to know himself. The books are not evidence that I have completed the journey. They are evidence that I was willing to begin it. My hope is that Emergence helps others begin their own journey, not my journey, their journey. I do not want people to think like me. I want people to become conscious enough to understand why they think as they do. Because when one person becomes more aware, a family can change. When families change, communities can change. When communities change, cultures can evolve. And when cultures evolve, civilization may finally become capable of making decisions that serve more than fear, power, habit, and self-interest. This is why I had to write Emergence. I wrote it because my ancestors left me questions hidden within their survival. I wrote it because Africa gave me a larger historical and philosophical mirror in which to see myself. I wrote it because metaphysical psychology helped me explore the mind beneath the mind. I wrote it because the military taught me that preparation, observation, and continuous improvement are necessary in a changing environment. I wrote it because life taught me that achievement without self-knowledge can still leave a person searching. And I wrote it because I believe humanity is standing at a threshold. We can continue reacting from inherited fear, division, ego, and conditioning, or we can pause long enough to become aware of what is operating within us. We can create the gap, we can reconsider, we can choose, we can emerge. The greatest frontier before humanity may not be the exploration of outer space. It may be the unexplored territory within human consciousness. That is the frontier I have chosen to examine. I do not claim to have arrived. I'm still walking, still questioning, still discovering, still becoming, still emerging. And perhaps, if these words have reached something within you, you are emerging too.